project and you're just wrestling with getting the different parts to actually talk to each other.
Oh, absolutely.
Like maybe your user profile component needs to update the nav bar way over there,
right.
or a product view has to tell the shopping cart something.
Yeah, that's a classic problem.
It really is. And figuring this out, mastering this connection, it's just so crucial for building apps that are dynamic, scalable, and importantly, maintainable down the line.
Definitely.
So today we're doing a deep dive into exactly that.
Yeah.
Mastering component communication in Angular. Our mission here is basically to sift through a whole stack of insights on this, pull out the really key nuggets so you can get up to speed fast. We're talking everything from like simple parent-child stuff to the more complex state management solutions.
Right. And we're not just going to list the tools like here's that input, here's a service. We want to dig into why they matter. And crucially, how you actually choose the right strategy for different situations you'll run into. Because understanding that data flow, making it clear, that's really the foundation for, well, robust applications that don't drive you crazy later.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Starting with the most direct relationship, parent to child. How does Angular help with that, getting information down?
So the primary tool for that downward flow, parent sending data to the child, is the @input.
Input, okay.
Yeah. Think of it like, like a parent just giving a direct instruction or a piece of info to their child. The parent has data, it passes it straight down. And what the research really highlights is the predictability this gives you. If you're debugging, having that explicit @input binding is like a clear map showing exactly where data came from.
Makes sense. Less guesswork.
Exactly. It saves a ton of headaches.
All right, so that's data going down. What about the other way? Child needs to tell the parents something happened.
Right. So for sending things up, events, data, whatever you use at output, but it's paired with something called event emitter.
Event emitter.
The child basically says, hey, parent, something important just happened. It emits an event, maybe with some data attached. And then the parent, in its template, is just listening for that specific event.
So it's like the child raised the flag and the parent sees it.
Precisely. And these two, @input for down, @output for up, they really form the, let's say, the backbone for clear communication in those direct parent-child setups. Makes tracing changes way easier.
Okay, that handles parent-child nicely. Very clear boundaries. But what about the scenario I mentioned earlier? User logs in and suddenly like 3 different unrelated parts of the app need to know about it.
Right.
The header icon, maybe a dashboard message, some auth flag somewhere else. You can't just chain it output events all the way across. It'd be a nightmare.
Exactly. That's where that direct approach breaks down. And this is where shared services become, well, pretty much the ideal solution. Like you said, they act as these central hubs.
Okay, so services as hubs, how do they actually work? What's the magic there?
Well, it leans heavily on 2 core Angular features, dependency injection, or DI, and RxJS observables.
RxJS, okay.
Observable.
Yeah. The main idea is you create a service, and you usually provide it at the root level using @injectable. What that does is it ensures you have just one single instance of that service for the entire application. A singleton.
Got it. One central place.
Exactly. Think of it like a single message board everyone can see and post to. Any component, anywhere, can get access to this same service instance. And inside that service, you typically use RxJS subjects. Or actually, more often you'll see behavior subjects.
Why behavior subject specifically?
Good question. The key difference is that a behavior subject holds on to the last value that was emitted. So if a component subscribes after a value has already been sent, it still gets that latest value immediately.
Ah, okay. So new components aren't left in the dark.
Precisely. It makes the state more consistent across the app. So component A can call a method on the service, like update message, which pushes a new value into the behavior subject using .next. Then component B, C, or Z, wherever they are, can just subscribe to that same behavior subject in the service, and they'll get the updates.
Seems pretty straightforward.
It is, conceptually. But there's a huge gotcha here, a really critical best practice that the sources hammer home.
What's that?
You have to unsubscribe from these manual subscriptions. When your component is destroyed, you need to clean up that subscription in the Nginx destroy lifecycle hook.
Right, the memory leak issue.
Exactly. If you don't, those subscriptions just hang around listening forever even when the component's gone. It eats up memory. Seriously, not cleaning these up is a super common source of bugs and performance problems. Don't skip the unsubscribe.
Okay, noted. Unsubscribe is critical for manual subscription. So @input, @output for direct, services for everything else. That seems to cover a lot of ground. It really does. Those two patterns handle, I'd say, maybe 90% of common communication needs in most Angular apps.
But Angular usually gives us options, right? Are there other, maybe more specialized tools we should know about?
Absolutely. There are definitely other patterns for specific situations. One is using ViewChild or ViewChildren.
ViewChild. Oh, but what does that let you do?
It allows a parent component to get a direct reference to one of its child component instances in its template, or even just a plain HTML element.
So instead of events, the parent can just reach in and call a method on the child directly.
Exactly, or access one of its properties. It can be useful for certain things, maybe triggering an animation directly or calling some imperative API on the child. But, and this is a big but, the sources strongly caution against overusing it. They often say it breaks unidirectional data flow and should be used cautiously.
Why is breaking that unidirectional flow bad?
Because it makes things harder to reason about. If data is flowing down predictably via at input and events are flowing up via at output, or everything goes through a service, you have clear pathways. When a parent starts directly messing with a child's internal state or methods, it creates this hidden dependency, this side channel. It can make debugging really tough later on because changes can happen unexpectedly from the parent's side. It's tempting for a quick fix, but often hurts maintainability.
Okay, so ViewChild is powerful, but use it sparingly. Makes sense. What else? What about really big, complex apps?
Right. So when you scale up, maybe you have tons of components, complex state interactions, lots of things needing the same pieces of data, or you need really strict predictability. That's when you start looking at state management libraries.
Like NGRX.
NGRX is the most prominent one in the Angular world, yeah.
Yeah.
It follows a pattern similar to Redux.
And what's the core idea there? How does that work in simple terms?
Well, the main principle is centralizing your entire application state into one single immutable store.
Immutable, meaning it can't be changed directly.
Correct. Components don't just modify the state. Instead, they dispatch actions. An action is like an event describing intent. I want to add this item to the cart, for example. Then you have reducers, which are pure functions. They take the current state and the action, and they produce a completely new state based on that action.
Okay, so actions signal intent. Reducers create the new state. How do components get the data out?
Through selectors. Selectors are functions that query the store and slice out just the pieces of state a component needs. And finally, there are effects to handle side effects, like making API calls when an action happens. You don't want API calls inside your pure reducers.
Wow, okay, that's quite a system. Actions, reducers, selectors, effects.
It is. It introduces some boilerplate, for sure. But the big win, especially in large apps, is that it enforces that strict unidirectional data flow we talked about. Everything flows through this central system in a predictable way. And because the state is immutable and changes happen via pure functions, debugging becomes much easier, especially for complex state interactions. You can even time travel debug, replay actions, see exactly how the state changed.
So NGRX and similar libraries are really for those large-scale, complex state scenarios.
Exactly. Probably overkill for simpler apps, but invaluable when complexity ramps up.
Okay, we've covered the main tools. At input, at output, services with RxJS, ViewChild, state management like NGRX. Now, let's talk about putting it all together effectively. What are the key best practices? How do we use these tools wisely?
Right. Knowing the tools is just step one. Using them well is key. The sources consistently emphasize a few core principles. First, aim for loose coupling.
Loose coupling, meaning components shouldn't depend too directly on each other.
Precisely. Especially for components that aren't directly related, parent-child. Favor using a shared service for communication between them, rather than things like ViewChild or trying to bubble events up through many layers. Why? Because loosely coupled components are just fundamentally easier to test in isolation, easier to reuse somewhere else, and much easier to maintain or refactor later on.
Okay. Loose coupling via services. What else?
Second, really stick to that unidirectional data flow principle whenever possible. Whether it's parent-to-child flow or data flowing via a service, keeping it predominantly one way makes your application's behavior much more predictable and easier to debug. Avoid those sneaky side channels where possible.
Makes debugging simpler if you know which way the data is supposed to be going.
Exactly. Third, when you are using RxJS observables in your services, leverage the power of RxJS operators. Don't just subscribe raw. The readings highlight a few really useful ones. Debounce time is great for things like search input, so you don't fire off requests on every single keystroke.
Right, wait until the user pauses typing.
Yeah. Then there's switch map, which is fantastic for handling subsequent requests. Like if the user types a new search query, it automatically cancels the previous pending request and switches to the new one. Distinct until changed is useful to prevent emitting the same value multiple times in a row if it hasn't actually changed.
Saves unnecessary updates.
Yep. And operators like take until or take one are essential tools for managing the subscription lifecycle, helping you prevent those memory leaks we talked about.
So learning RxJS operators pays off.
Huge payoff, yes. And finally, just to hammer it home one more time, always unsubscribe.
Okay, I get it. Unsubscribe.
Yeah. But it's worth repeating. Now, the async pipe in your templates handles this automatically, which is great. Use it whenever you can. But for any subscription you make manually in your component's TypeScript code using .subscribe, you must pair it with an unsubscribe. Call in and undestroy. Seriously.
Got it. Unsubscribe manual subscriptions and end on destroy. Okay, this has been quite the deep dive. It feels like mastering Angular component communication isn't just about learning syntax, is it?
Not at all.
It's really about architectural thinking, designing how the pieces of your app fit together for, scalability, clarity, and long-term maintainability.
That's exactly it. It's about the bigger picture. By thoughtfully combining Angular's features at input, at output for those clear parent-child links, services and observables, for broader communication, maybe NGRX when things get really complex, and then sticking to those best practices like loose coupling and unsubscribing, that's how you build those smooth user experiences on top of clean, robust code that you won't hate working on 6 months later. It really comes down to choosing the right tool for the job, based on the relationship between your components.
Makes total sense. It's all about making those components talk effectively. But all right, here's a final thought for you, our listener, to maybe chew on.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about how components communicate. But what if the trickiest communication isn't code to code, but developer to developer? Especially when teams have different opinions on the best strategy. Should we use a service here, or is NGRX better? How might those architectural choices we just discussed actually impact how well a team collaborates and ultimately how successful the project is? Something to think about beyond just the code itself.
That's a really interesting point, the human element.
Definitely something to consider. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive today. Hope you found it useful. Until next time.